Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop music and culture that happened throughout the week. This is a bonus episode. You saw the thumbnail. You know what it is. You know what we're talking about tonight. Today, whatever, wherever you are. But first and foremost, want to shout out the subscribers who have been subscribing in audio form for however long. Bars. Appreciate you. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast audio listening. And also, extra special shout out. Well, equal. Let me just say equal. Don't start any wars. But an equal shout out to those who are subscribed right here on YouTube. We are at 17,000 subscribers, which is great. I appreciate you. I think we can get to 25,000 by the end of the year. I really think it's possible now, because at first I didn't. I just was like, whatever. We got to 1,000. I was cool. 5,000, 10,000. It was fine. But now it's like, okay, keep going up. Why not? Why not keep going up? You know what I'm saying? It just makes sense. So shout out to you. Content on the channel, if you missed it and might want to check it out, and this is also in audio form, recently did a review of the Clips, which looks like album of the year at this point, but we'll see. We got a lot to go. Let God sort them out. I'm not one of you new guys who's just like, yeah, for the first week or so, I was listening, but yeah, I'm good now. No, I'm still listening. Also, check out my review on the last episode of Raekwon's brand new album, The Emperor's New Clothes, featuring Ghostface, Method Man, Nas, Griselda, that being Westside Gunn, Benny the Butcher, and Conway. Very dope album that, even though my review says it's a good album, but it won't make my top 5. I'm not going to lie. I've been listening to like that and Clips back to back. I skipped the skits though now because they just don't make no sense. I don't know why they're there. They're just there to be there. But as far as the music, Raekwon's performance as an MC, the features, I'm still not the biggest fan of gruff sounding voice Ghost, but lyrically he came through and did what he does, and I don't mind it as much. So we'll see. That's what the deliberation between end of the year means, man. Just kind of listening to the best that drops and seeing where they fall by the end of the year. So my top 5 is not safe because we got a lot to go. But let's get into what you came here for, what I'm here to report. So first and foremost, let me give a big shout out to the homie Jamar, who called me at the last minute or texted me at the last minute to say, yo, you want to go see Nas in Philly with an orchestra? And I was like, yeah. Is it free 99? And he was like, yep. So me and my wife met up with him and his lady, and we went to Philly, check out Nas with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and it was at the TD Pavilion at the Man. So if you don't know, that's an outdoor venue, right? It's a pavilion, so if you got good seats, which we really did. Again, shout out to Jamal. You're in the pavilion area, but there's also areas behind that with grass and chairs and stuff like that. We was everywhere, y'all. Y'all know this. If you've been to any festival, it don't even have to be a hip hop festival. I've been inside the venues. This is in Newark, NJ Pack. I've been inside venues. I went to see Funkadelic Parliament or George Clinton, right? Um, and you would have thought we was outside the way people were smoking in there. It was crazy. I was just like, smoking inside like this, but whatever. But it was a nice venue, you know what I'm saying? We had good seats. It was hot. It was hot. And some of it just had to do with the fact that um everybody was standing up, as you can imagine, because it was Nas, he was performing Illmatic, and it just was the type of concert where you wanted to stand up. You know, I sat down a couple of times because I'm an old man, okay? And then there's a couple of songs I just took time to like look at the photos I got and stuff like that. But my review of it is going to be interesting. Let me just say, for those who just want to know straight off the back, should they go see it? Yes. If you're a Nas fan, you should. If you're an Illmatic fan, you should go see it, right? And I'll tell you why. But the way the show is set up, right? Nas is kind of telling a story with this album, Illmatic, about the time, right? About where he was, who he was, his history, how he just wanted to have one song. He wanted, like, man, if I could get one song on the radio, I would be happy. You know, I don't even need a record deal, long career, nothing like that. Just one song on the radio, which I thought was dope, right? Um, and sort of like an inspiration for those who want to get on, right? I know being on the radio isn't the thing as much as it used to be, but you kind of, it's the equivalent of putting your song out there and seeing people react in a positive way, right? Or even going viral. That's kind of like how he looked at it back in the early to mid 90s. Like, if I could just have one song that's a hit that everybody know that's played on the radio, I'd be happy. And throughout the performance of Illmatic, you know, he kept telling these different stories. And most weren't necessarily like, this song is about, right? Or this song is inspired by. It was more of a setup for the song, like what the song is about, like a song like The World Is Yours, right? He's talking in real time, not just back then. But one thing I really liked about it was he focused on the cassette. Like, yo, the the cassette, y'all have cassettes back then, blah, blah, blah. Like, we only halfway through the cassette before we flip it over. So it was pretty dope because he was trying to paint the picture of what it was like when Illmatic came out and how most of us absorbed that music. I have the cassette behind me, but why show you? You've seen the cassette before, right? But I have the original that I purchased back in '94. Um, and one of the things that stood out to me is he did all the joints, right, that you know off the album. A couple of the songs were dope, right? Like, he obviously did New York State of Mind. It was like how the songs were building, you know, right? Some were medleys like One Love, and when I say medleys, I'll tell you it really wasn't a medley, but I mean musically One Love was sort of teased with Represent at the same time because they kind of played a little bit of Represent, and I was like, oh, they're gonna do Represent. But then it kind of transitioned into One Love, and he performed One Love, but then they transitioned back to Represent, and I was like, oh, that's cool, that's different, right? um Same thing like with songs like The World Is Yours. Not as far as the medley, but just, it was dope the way they didn't start like, yo, just start playing the recognizable beat and that's it, right? It was a build, right? None of it started the way you would press play on a record. So I kind of like that when he did it with One Love and Represent and The World Is Yours, right? It Ain't Hard to Tell. and the drummer was singing Michael Jackson's part on there, which was kind of crazy. But there was another song, and I'm mad I'm forgetting it now. And it could be One Love, but the drummer was singing the lyrics or the harmony or something like that from the original sample. I thought that was hot because at first I was like, you head nodding like, oh, you know what? That's the sample for this song. But they're playing the sample out and the drummer is singing. When I say those are two very different vocals that you got to hit, vocal tones that you have to hit to sing Michael Jackson's da 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 da. Like, see, I can't even do it. It sound all da 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 da. You know how Mike sing it, okay? But to have him do that, I just thought it was nice touches, right? First of all, Nas was clean when he came out. The suit was crazy, okay? The jewelry looked like it had lights on it because it was diamonds, okay? It was hot, right? The glasses, the shades or whatever, everything was hot. So it kind of and the band obviously tuxes and stuff like that. So it was kind of dope to see Nas at this point in his career performing this album, his debut album, in this way. It had a sense of maturity, celebration. Even Nas said, like, yo, we made it, right? Not I made it, we made it, right? If you've been listening to me since 94 and all the things we've been through, and you here tonight, we made it. I just thought that was so dope because when you think about it, if you are like a hardcore fan of Nas and you've been on that journey with him and he's saying things like this, you start to reflect off your own life. And a part of one of the biggest reasons why we like um artists, not all, this might not be the reason for all, but the majority of the time is because we can relate. And here was Nas being relatable based off of his journey, but his journey was your journey as a fan because you were there throughout his career, throughout his life, the ups and downs, marriage, divorce, his mother passing, rap beefs, East Coast, West Coast, like all of it. So it was dope to see like this celebration. And what else was dope was he didn't look old, right? He didn't look worn down or like, because you know how some celebrities, you see him on television, like, still look good. He still look good. And then you see him in person and you start to see the blemishes and you're like, oh, that must have been the camera angle or something. Uh, but nah, he looked good. And then also when he brought out AZ looked good. Like, yo, we healthy, we here. We ain't, the struggle hasn't beaten us down. AZ coming out and performing with Nas was the crowd went crazy because it's AZ and Nas together. There's more history, and obviously he performed "Life's a B," which was dope. But then later, AZ came back and performed like a medley of songs, which I honestly I didn't anticipate because after Nas did Illmatic, he did a few of his other songs, but with AZ in particular, he performed like Affirmative Action, right? Phone Tap. Because at first Phone Tap was kind of weird because Nas was like, hold up, I dropped something. People were like, oh, you dropped that watch, you dropped that watch with that ice in it. Uh, but he was like, I dropped my beeper. So at first I'm like, oh, they about to do Phone Tap. And that's exactly what happened. Um, but just to double back to Illmatic, and I just want to point out a few things that stood out to me while he's performing Illmatic. Um, one, if you've seen Nas perform in street clothes by himself, this isn't the same experience. It just isn't. It's not. Now, if you've seen him perform a million times, you've seen him perform those songs, I doubt it's drastically different for you, but I think there's something to be said about Nas being in the suit, an orchestra behind him, his band members being in suits. Um, it just brings a different level to Illmatic. It celebrates it in a, I don't want to be elitist, but in a high class way. And honestly, there should be more albums celebrated in that way. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about Illmatic. And Nas has already done it. So, and not to say that nobody ain't rhymed with no banjo bands or orchestras. Everybody's rhymed with everything before. So the Roots was a band, okay? What I'm saying is the presentation for that album, where he's literally talking about Project Steps and pissy hallways and crackheads, and it's a classy affair. Now, the crowd, or at least in Philly, wasn't dressed that way, and I think it had more to do with it being outside. Because I came dressed in a way where I was halfway, right? I was casual, I had a t-shirt, something a little ill, t-shirt, had some light jeans on, had some exclusive kicks on, but I left my blazer in the car because when I saw how people were rolling up, I was like, oh, I don't need it. Plus, it was super hot. Like, I was already hot. So it was all like a blessing. But that's the one thing to separate Nas with orchestra versus Nas on stage with DJ. It's very different. I know Nas with DJ is probably just as dope, even more hip hop, but I like this. I like seeing different things done in hip hop. So if you felt some kind of way because in the past, for those who don't know, Nas said that this was a couple years ago that he's never performing Illmatic again. I think that was an emotional statement because I think this type of performance with the orchestra gave the album new life and gave him motivation. Because to be honest, when he said that, we killed him for it. Like, what? Nope. Are you serious? Like, Illmatic, you're not going to perform anymore? You know what I'm saying? So it's dope to see. I don't have any gripes about it. I don't go to a lot of shows, to be honest, unless there's some kind of band. So I'm cool with it. Some other things I noted. Now, I say this all the time when it comes to Illmatic, and most people say, "I like One Time for Your Mind." I don't see nothing wrong with it. I don't skip it. Some even say it's great. I'm not even arguing any of that. I just always felt out of everything else, it's the weakest link and the one that sounds out of place with the tone of the album. Now, it's dope because it's a lighthearted song on an album that talks about so many strong themes, right? Serious themes. So I'm not against One Time for Your Mind, but every time I say it's the weakest link, or sometimes I skip it, here come the Avenger Defenders, right? And again, I'm not gonna hold you, but guess what? Nas is here to perform Illmatic with an orchestra, and he didn't perform One Time for Your Mind. Only record on that short album, because it is a short album, but the only record on that album he didn't perform was One Time for Your Mind. I'm just saying, okay? Even Nas skipped it, okay? I'm just making that point. Another thing that stood out. Now, forgive me if I missed it. If you've seen Nas perform with Symphony in another city and this did happen, then maybe he slipped, right? And forgot. But again, as Nas is talking through the album, he said, yo, I was just a kid who was blessed to have all these dope producers. So he starts naming them like Primo and Large Professor, and Q-Tip. and LES, and then he keeps talking, and I'm like, no, he didn't say Pete Rock. Now, one or two things. If you know the news and you know the history of Nas and Pete Rock, there's always been issues there. The rumor back in the days was their issues came when Pete Rock, I guess, tried to talk to his girl or something like that, or his baby mama at the time. So that was a problem, right? At the time, some people say, "Well, Jay Z, yeah, they wasn't together when Jay Z was messing with Carmen, so it didn't matter, right?" Players don't care about what you used to have, okay? But I think the rumor back then was that Nas, this was his baby mother. He was actively with her when this happened. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but it made a lot of sense versus when's the last time you heard Nas and Pete Rock? And I'm talking about, forget now, I'm talking about even if you go back then, right? You would think, but you've heard Primo and other large pro, like you've heard other collaborations with some of those people. Um, so, there was that, but I think possibly it may have more to do with the legal situation that came up. And there could be legal ramifications for even saying somebody's name. So I was thinking like, well, maybe that's why. Um, or or if we just want to go to the essence, maybe he just don't rock with him based off of their relationship over the years. But it didn't seem like that when things came to a head in recent years, where Pete Rock was, I guess, trying to get some money for something, and not necessarily like I'm getting at Nas for it, but more so something that he was probably owed as a producer, and and companies, and the industry. And I remember Nas's response not being a combative one. So who knows? Maybe he just forgot. But I'm sitting there like, he said LES. And I know LES is from Queensbridge, so it's probably easier to say, but it's Pete Rock. So again, maybe he forgot at the show. Maybe I missed it at this show. Maybe I didn't start paying attention until after he said the other names. And maybe he said Pete Rock first. I don't remember, but I just remember waiting to hear that and like, oh, he didn't say Pete Rock. Okay, cool. But nevertheless, didn't really take anything away from the show. It was just something I observed. So again, if you experienced it and he said Pete Rock's name at another show, leave your comments in the comment section below. It's not my battle. I don't care that much. Uh, Also, this is what stood out. So again, shout out to the homie Jamar. I leaned over to Jamar and said, yeah, it's dope that Nas started this out, right? Um, Saying we don't rap over dub tracks. We got real live musicians here. And then he commenced to, and for the most part, not just Illmatic songs, but even a couple of songs in the medley of records afterward. He was performing all three verses, like for real. And it's hot, and he got a tuxedo, and I think somebody brought him some Henny at one point. Like, now don't get me wrong, he did the majority of the show performing them lyrics to a T. And in some cases, he made little edits, but the edits were dope, right? And purposely, they're for breath control, man. You yelling in the mic, you're walking back and forth. Sometimes you're jumping in the air, like it's hot. They had some air up there, but that don't mean anything when you doing that kind of activity. So I get the editing of the lyrics, but the way they were edited for breath control, and they still sound dope. In some cases, sound cleaner, right? Um, and I was like, damn, you don't see that enough. And I don't go to a lot of shows, but typically, cats will give you a verse from this song, a verse from that song, like they'll give you verses, right? Or if it's a real popular song, they might give you 2. If it's the song they known for, then they'll give you all 3 verses. You talking about Nas performing back during the days of 16s, 16, 16, 16 on stage, 90 degrees outside. They had air, but we were dying. Okay, uh, nobody cared though. So I thought that was dope to see because remember, this man is 50. It's not chip tooth Nas with mad energy. You know what I'm saying? Just with 3,000 dudes on the stage helping them, like, and they just all just blah, 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 blah. It's not all the energy. This is him. There's an orchestra, but it's him performing, right? And he didn't take a lot of breaks to like let beats build and stuff like that. And he didn't necessarily rely on the crowd until a little bit towards the end, but understandably so. The brother he looked tired. He looked physically tired after a while. Which was cool. Like my homie said, one time Nas stopped rapping and just closed his eyes. And he was like, was he asleep? Like, and it was, but I mean, after what we just watched with Illmatic alone, I was hoping there was a little bit more at the end. Plus, I knew because I saw clips back in the days, but I didn't know how much after performing Illmatic was going to be at the end. Which I think I'll get into right now. So he performs Illmatic, like, yo, my first album, Illmatic, bow. The orchestra gets up and walks out. So I'm kind of like, all right, what we doing? But then I'm starting to see, his band's not moving, right? The DJ, I think it was a dude on keyboards, the drummer, and I think a dude who had a bass. They stay. So I'm like, I know what we about to get. And he starts saying, he start announcing or start like bigging up the years of his albums. Cause he like, you know what I'm saying? Illmatic, 94. And then he starts going through the years of release, right? 94, 96, 98, 2000. Like, so the crowd's just going crazy because, they thinking about all them records they bought. And I'm getting hyped because I'm like, oh yeah, now we going back to QB with it. So he says we're going to do a couple of those. And the first record he does is The Message. And if you could see, you can see, right? The background I got here with the red. I think the color changed to like a reddish green. And if go watch it now on YouTube. If I Ruled the World, right in the beginning. Now imagine being back then, 96. Promotional campaign was Nas Is Coming, COMING, for you police. And this is off of Illmatic. So the hype is crazy. And when you see the If I Ruled the World video, and right in the beginning, Nas is in the Lexus, I believe, front of Queensbridge with the red and green lighting, that Hype Williams like put all over the car, and he does The Message. And I remember hearing it back then, like, yo, what's that? Like, that song is crazy. So he starts this medley with The Message, and the crowd goes bonkers as a result. And he goes on to do a couple of joints. Again, he brought AZ back out and did Affirmative Action, right? Which everybody went crazy. Like, yo, you want to do Affirmative Action? Phone Tap, like I said. And then AZ also did Sugar Hill, which was the debut single for him off of his debut album, Do or Die. And I'm not going to hold you. At least where I was the only one with the Sugar Hill. Like I knew every bar. And you know what I'm saying? Not to say that, the crowd was faulty because they didn't know, but I'm just saying, I'm hip hop. I know AZ too. I know his bars as well. Every bar. So that was a moment for me to be like, Sugar Hill, baby. You know what I'm saying? Plus it sound good. But then this was the other takeaway before I finish. There's always debates online about certain songs that Nas has done in his career that the boom bappers hate, right? And really they say, yo, why he had to do If I Ruled the World, do that commercial song, which is crazy because for one, Lauryn Hill's on the hook and the Fugees were hot as rappers back then. So what she's singing If I Ruled the World? If I Ruled the World is a song by Curtis Blow, which is hip hop, right? You ever heard it? She's singing the hook to Curtis Blow's song, right? Not no R&B sexy, joint. Curtis Blow's song, If I Ruled the World, Lauryn Hill singing the hook. And the beat is from Houdini, hip hop. One Love. Please, children, go and listen to these records before you listen to these boom bappers from back in 96. They were lying to themselves. If I Ruled the World is hip hop through and through. No R&B beat, no R&B hook. It's all hip hop, which is dope. Now, I always had a problem with the lyrics of I open every cell in Attica, send them to Africa. Like, yo, you want to send a bunch of criminals to Africa? But that's just me being a comedian, okay? But nevertheless, when that song hit, all them same dudes who was in the crowd, oh nah, getting excited and all of that, I could see the boom bappers in the crowd. They was hyped too. And the ladies was drowning you out if you wasn't hyped. So the reaction was what it was. But it wasn't just that song. Another song off of Nostradamus, which is an album that I believe it might be his second worst now. Before it was his worst album. Because Nas has 18 albums. Nasir might be his worst album. Nostradamus is probably better than that. But You Owe Me. And I remember cats hated that. Now that was more R&B, radio ready, Genuine on the hook, singing. But I was in the club back then. What was that, 98? I was in the club heavy in DC almost every weekend. And when I tell you that song came out, me and my homies already knew what it was. So we loved it the minute we heard it. We thought it was dope. The ladies was drowning this pavilion out when that came on. And I don't even think it was just the ladies. I think it was everybody, boom bappers included. They were probably happy because he fed them Illmatic first. So now they were good. Like, all right, I'm good. I got my head nod on. He also performed Uchiwali, which was also, like, okay, Uchiwali. He performed his verse, but I ain't gonna hold y'all. I don't care what Jay-Z said. The best verse on there is Jungle. And I was hoping, like, just bring Jungle out. Little young thing going out, like, please. But Jungle didn't come out, okay? Which was cool. Nas performed his verse. And lastly, and he did more than that in the medley. I'm just naming like almost like the party records that he performed. But he did Made You Look. You already know. I was saying, yo, he definitely gonna do Made You Look. But when you think about the Nas and Hit Boy run, he did Spicy. Now I don't know if boom bappers like that one, but it's impossible not to like. It's off King's Disease 1. It's the bonus track. But Nas got busy on that joint, and that beat. When I say Nas doing a medley of songs, ending with one mic, as we expected, which was also dope because of the appearance and how it was, and people knew all the lyrics. It was dope to see, right? And a dope way to end it. But I think, like, in general, with this performance, of Illmatic, celebrating Illmatic, telling a story, bringing out AZ more than once, so that you get you get your fill of Nas and AZ as far as like how they've been linked across the years through their music together, and you get like splashes of songs throughout his career that was dope. He even did his verse off of Missy's joint, Hot Boys. I think that was the name of that joint, um, which was dope. I forgot how violent his verse was in there. I was like, damn, body's chopped up. I was like, whoa, damn, word. Like, yo, y'all don't know. Like back then, you could rappers was on R&B joints talking like that, talking crazy. But it was just dope to see a small snapshot of his career, starting with Illmatic and the things he did from there all the way up to Spicy. It just was a fantastic show. Um, for those who don't know, and I'm definitely going to end with this because I was going to say it anyway. Um, so I basically grew up with Nas. I'm not from Queensbridge. I'm from Brooklyn. Don't get it twisted, okay? Um, my cousin is Ill Will. Our families is very close. You know what I'm saying? My mother and his mother are sisters. When I say back in the 80s and early 90s, me and my younger sister were in Queensbridge like every weekend. It got to the point where my mother was like, "Are y'all staying home this weekend?" You know what I'm saying? It's because my Aunt Versi's house was the fun house. So obviously hanging out with my big cousin Ill Will all the time. And when Nas came out, it was difficult for me for like maybe a good 10 minutes to not see him as the person I grew up with and a person I know. I'm just keeping it a buck with y'all because that was the first time I've seen him in person in decades. Now I've talked to him before since then, since back in the days. But that was the first time me seeing him. Now, some people would say, "Oh, you backstage, you get up on stage." That wasn't the situation. When you put it this way, if you know somebody who's a celebrity, you real cool with them like that, that's not really how y'all connect. You connect phone call, private situation, stuff like that. I'm not running up on the stage so he can see that I'm there. Okay. I can say that later, like, "Oh, I was in Philly when you did blah, blah, blah." But it was from a personal perspective, it took me a minute, right? Because I'm like, "Oh, it's Nasir," right? Then as he starts to perform the songs, and this is how it played out in my life, I saw him as Nas, like you see him, right? But watching this, like this culmination of where he started and where he is now, and watching him perform at this point in his career, it was like he said, we made it. That's how I felt proud. I was proud of him. I was proud of us. And I don't mean me and him. I'm just everybody who was around during that time, whether you knew somebody or not, that we were here, we were healthy, we made it, right? I'm not fat, because you can turn into that. Okay. He rich, so he can get a trainer. Me, I gotta go to Planet Fitness. You know what I'm saying? But I just enjoyed the experience overall. And again, if you're a Nas fan, maybe Illmatic is the only joint you really like. Go see it if you can. Go see it because this experience is very different from seeing him at SOBs and like fatigues and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, that's just as dope. But this felt more this felt more appropriate for his journey. And it feels like this is how hip hop should be celebrated also. It doesn't have to be, let's get hoodied and timmed out. Let's celebrate this classic album that goes beyond the genre of hip hop. Did you go see Nas perform with the orchestra in your city or another city? Leave your comments in the comment section below on YouTube. Tell me about your experience. Follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. Subscribe to the audio podcast if that's your bag, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast listening. Or if you prefer the video version, you want to see me say these things, and check out all the additional content I have on the channel, including a new episode of That Time in Hip Hop that's on the way. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Hip Hop Now Pod. Hey y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.